The most confusing part of Doki Doki is not its mysteries or hidden Easter eggs, but figuring out what is intended to be enjoyed. Take the characters, are they meant to be liked or laughed at in terms of satire? The game states the goal was to give nods to games that are genuinely badly written while keeping some level of authenticity that would make the game and the characters enjoyable. Despite any claims otherwise, the characters are meant to be enjoyed. But for what? The romance is a big part of who they are, but is justified under the pretense of bizarre or questionable exchanges, leading it to be intentionally bad. They're intended to be tropes that are laughed at, and any praise for their basic ideas are found in any media that contains them. The appeal in deconstruction or having reasons for their tropes is thrown around, but from Fate Stay Night explain why someone maintains a certain image to a key visual novel tying strategy to someone's personality, where Grisea to Katawa Shoujo would subvert so-called normal anime archetypes, visual novels have done it all before. And if you consider that every eccentric shoujo male lead has more than a first glance or the explanation of a dark and troubled past for a shonen character, it's a praise that is ignorant. The less you know, the greater things appear to be. The generic harm a la Teleru offering more deconstructions of Genki girls, stoics, tsunderes, bad girls, or promiscuous ones, it's not that big of a deal. As Doki's characters develop by liking you, hating you, or fixing their relationships with others without your help, the game opts to reset those characterizations. When you reach special preparations, Natsuki would act in the same generic way whether she outright hated me or when we had a great relationship. It's laziness given value by satire. You thought I was written poorly? I was satirizing other games that are written poorly. Enjoyment can only be interpreted in one way. They are meant to be felt sorry for. Existing as objects of pity, fragile, boring, and likewise tragic, with either their reliance on you or inability to handle themselves, their purpose is to make you cry and wish you could save their lives. And while the game may infer it wants anime to innovate, it's more than happy to take its low self-esteem dolled up anime girls and subject them to unimaginable mental stress for nothing they did wrong as a means of becoming popular. And a look at the characters, Yuri doesn't even try to do the deconstruction thing, being a shy girl who acts that way due to bullying. Any step above that would be the self-harm, but it's easily left out or put in without any loss in the understanding of the character. If you interpret Act 2 as being fake, you're apt to classify Natsuki under a tsundere that still may have an issue, but isn't very different from any other tsundere. If you see the character as being abused, then you have to accept the premise that she is taking manga out of her room that her father bought for her because her dad is going to beat her up for having the manga he bought her in her room. The huge manga collection is easily removed, and considering its size, it was taken to the literature club, but despite being solved by violence, her dad doesn't seem to care. Painted as an authoritarian figure who does not let his daughter eat a cupcake, he supports her presence in the literature club as he allows her to bake and ultimately eat the cupcakes she made for them, and in any case, he should know where the manga went. It totals up to nothing more than an inane revenge fantasy to want to protect the cute girl from the evil dad. And while this is happening, poems are being used as a means of informing characterization, meaning even the stupidest in the audience has to be able to understand them. It suffers in a realism sense. Why does the person write the poem and why does no one understand the poem? Sari will state that she didn't want anyone to know about her depression, but will write a poem about how she is so depressed to all of her clubmates. Yuri will write a poem about cutting herself for no reason other than that, and likewise no one clues into the even more obvious metaphor. While some forms of exposition are forgivable due to inexperience, it's clear that the Literature Club could have only been designed to incorporate this. Meaning it was intended to vomit information in the form of telling you, hey, that character is actually deep. Any moment of somewhat subtle characterization is dwarfed by a vague shock poem that is inexplainable. As to how a cartoonish drawing of Sari was made, or how blood was edited onto a poem, or why there's a poem if up the exposure, a hidden Easter egg for the next game is present. Confronting Sari about her depression, you really put me into a trap. She reassures she didn't want to make me worry, disregarding the poem. Lines like, did she really want so badly for me to just not think about her, prove that even at its most serious, the prose is tepid, boring, and bloated with unnecessary words, but at least the music is sad. She later tells you, I love you so much I want to die, and being a line I've only seen used by the spooky possessed girl in the Junji Ito collection, it may be intended to be silly as she's being mind-hacked. But if that idea is true, it would mean that the depression has no meaning, as even though being mind-hacked sounds awful, it's a much different issue from being depressed. As we do find out after a bloated filler sequence with either Yuri or Natsuki that serves no purpose considering their resets, that Sari didn't kill herself due to either of my options. Monika is revealed to be the greater influence in regards to everything, and anything said would be undoubtedly enhanced by cosmic horror. Poem is glitched, Monika knew Sari was dead by the morning, tells the player you really left her hanging, and puts Sari's suicide note for you to see. With it having no relation to your actions, it serves no purpose. The assumption would be that it would play around with that narrative, but through the same criteria mentioned earlier, it's already known. It's even worse when you consider that Monika's apparent goal is to make everyone else unattractive so she looks better. Yet she's being rude, she's revealing that it's her, and considering it's her existence at stake, it's absolutely unjustifiable. The suicide scene is tacky with Hell's Kitchen sound effects supplemented by glitches where brand new sound effects and music tracks are played despite them not existing in the first place. The artwork borders on offensive. The chair being where it is, the logical explanation of how Sari got up there is that there is a giant stool obscured by the camera. And visualizing that in action, Sari is standing using her upper body strength to pull herself up, all while doing it backwards. She needs to look good for the camera. However, it does turn out to be the chair, and visualizing that, you have to imagine that she jumped off the arm of the chair, torpedoed herself upwards, did a U-turn to put her head through the noose. And despite all this, the noose being tied on the uncentered ceiling fan, the satire on the typical house, there being even nothing remotely close to tying it in the first place. The delusional statement was made by the author. DDLC takes depression and suicide very seriously, and Sari is a realistic portrayal of depression. She is not used for cheap shock value. It's complete asinine, considering when the scene is over, it has no relevance to the plot at all. The only interesting part of a suicide, the aftermath, is missing. Instead, serious portrayal is totaled up to a jump scare. It's not as if the narrative chosen made it a necessary evil, and it lacks the foresight that anyone can spout off depression bad, suicide not good, as it cannot demonstrate any more than that. It's not realistic considering it's a mind-hacked individual, rendering any purpose about it to be meaningless. If Doki Doki takes suicide seriously and is used as a jump scare with scary music and scary sounds, the artwork for the scene doesn't make any sense, and it's not even a suicide. What doesn't? Hanging jokes and other insensitive remarks that have no place in characterization, it's written extremely poorly, and even later on, it uses the picture of a hanging girl as a random gag glitch on the wall. To its credit, it's not directly comparing to other games, and really, it's saved by the fact it's more of an ineptitude rather than any sort of intentional spite towards suicide victims. The attitude is what takes the cake, making it clear that it decides what a realistic portrayal of suicide is, and considering it's undeniable that Monika's mind hacking is the sole cause of the actions, it's confusing to say the least. As bad as it is, the envelope is pushed further. Act 2 is when it gets good. Being a lazy rehash of the original game, odd considering no one enjoyed it, it provides a neat little framework to add glitches to. The scenario itself isn't very scary, which is mainly due to the subversion being expected from the very start, and while it doesn't mean it's bad, praise for the game along the lines of "I was scared when a file was added to my folder" is neither scary or unexpected. Doki Doki's fear factor relies entirely on the element of surprise, aka jump scares. The motivations and reasons for why the game is the way it is are easily found out through a traceback.txt, leading the mystery to be solved even before it starts. Characterization takes a backseat as the girls become inhuman shadows of their former selves to behave in intentionally unrealistic and pointless ways. Ultimately, the fear of the game is not knowing whether you're going to get jump scared. The first jump scare tells you the normal conventions of the game cannot be trusted. You can be talking to someone and their eyes turn to fuzz. A brief conversation will be interrupted by a jump scare of the girl in a creepy face. You press a button, there is always a chance you can get jump scared. The appeal is no longer the story, the characters, but bracing yourself for a series of over-the-top scares that are forgotten as quickly as they come. By making everything scary, everything about the game becomes unscary and turns out to be nothing more than annoying. The horror becomes less of what's going on and more of am I going to be shown a completely random screamer, further justified by its metafiction and rule breaking. Psychological issues are back and they have even less purpose. Natsuki will yell out, "My dad beats the shit out of me" in bolded letters, and Yuri will tell everyone to kill themselves or pee on poems because everything is weird. They are blunt, they are edgy, and they have no meaning other than being that. There are plenty of stupid glitches mainly about impossible elements. Eyes popping out of heads, photorealistic facial features, and filters with veins. A jump scare will have the music of a scene edited despite it being impossible to edit .mp3 in a visual novel engine. There will be running sounds, neck snapping sounds, backwards text that only exists if you download a font. You can even get a Windows 10 blue screen of death for Windows 7 and Mac. The glitch game becomes a stupid game as being glitched doesn't mean you can disregard reality. But it's not as if it's done without intention. By keeping everything confusing and ambiguous, you're able to justify any scare you do on the basis of there's a reason. And any plot hole or continuity error you find, the logic of how personalities work by flipping invisible gauges that cannot be reversed are all justified because it doesn't make sense to begin with. And especially Monika, as she continues to follow her logic of making everyone look bad so she looks better as a result, but fails to unimaginable degrees. If you ever choose not to pick Monika, she will break the game and look at you. Talking to someone, she looks at you again. You can only pick Monika. And when the big reveal finally occurs, she removes Yuri and Natsuki's files from the game, but is never explained as to why she didn't do this hours ago. She was well aware of their existence, but the argument used by the character is that she didn't want to break the game. It doesn't make sense when you consider all the out-of-character dialogue it said throughout the game, how it made Sayuri kill herself, how it deleted files from the game, and subsequently did the same actions that broke the game originally to the other girls. And Monika and her overall goal, any character can act in any way, so it's not fair to judge based on what I would do. But considering what I'm doing as a player, playing a fetish date sim, ogling her friends, taking advantage of their lack of choice, I don't understand why I'm not the one being tortured. She'll edit the HTML of a website, I don't know how, to write a proclamation of her love to millions of people before we even meet. And I do think bizarre ideas such as love for that person would work better if done through her trying to escape, and considering the lack of things to do and how she does mention that idea, it creates a narrative by helping her and it not working. You can demonstrate some level of interest and respect, and her feelings would undoubtedly be enhanced due to desperation and the clinging to what's real. Providing more value to the metafiction of the consequences of disregarding or taking advantage of her, and fixing the stupidity that takes such a basic justification to extreme lows. Take the Space Classroom. It mentions it has a Twitter account and specifically states, "I didn't create the account, I only chose the username." Meaning that a person in another dimension had to make her an account, ask her what username she wanted, and give her the password to log in, all while contacting a person from a different reality. The character will call you by your real name, in this case Computer PC, made worse by the fact it calls you your in-game name right after, meaning the author accounted for the idea of computer PCs but didn't include it in the main sentence to begin with. She states that she's ready to spend the rest of her life in a space classroom, but will remark about how excited she is to go to college right after. She'll be unsure whether I'm a boy or a girl, but will call me her boyfriend regardless. The worst one of all isn't a plot hole but a self-insert by the author. While imbuing low self-esteem teenage anime girls with the essence of a middle-aged white guy is painful on its own, using them to praise your game and by extension yourself is downright pathetic. Earlier on, Yuri would talk about, isn't it amazing how an author can so deliberately take advantage of your own lack of imagination to completely throw you for a loop. But considering no one thought the game was a generic visual novel to begin with, it's self-congratulatory, claiming how smart you are and how dumb your audience is. It sets out to criticize bad horror, monsters, dark lighting, jump scares, and things that take advantage of the human instinct. But it fails to recognize that its own horror was dominated by anime girls with photorealistic features, snap necks, or spooky faces, dark lighting being used for scary red filters, and as a means of obscuring your vision. And who can forget the jump scares, starting off by defying the normal conventions of the text, just maybe taking advantage of the human instinct, with Natsuki running towards you, Yuri popping in and out, Monika not letting you pass. The only reason any of its elements could even be considered scary is because every button press had the potential of a jump scare. And by being meta, being justified in its disregard for quality and the potential of goodies such as screamers, gore, or other shock imagery. It is by definition pretentious, calling out what others do as bad while doing the exact same things. But with its need to praise horror novels and by obvious deduction itself, it extends the delusion, praising itself for hiding its villain in the cracks even though she revealed herself and went against her own logic hours before she officially revealed herself. Claiming the writing as being scary enough to put disturbing thoughts into your head when all it consisted of was tsundere screaming abuse and other witty edgy humor of, why don't you go cut yourself on that edge? Insisting it was defying expectations when the only reason anyone played it was because of the warning at the start said it was defying expectations. And it boldly claims that it doesn't try to be scary, but considering loud noises, jump scares, spooky faces, blood, the color red, a next-snap monster, photorealism on anime girls, it doesn't make any sense. Meaning the only possible explanation is that it's satire, and likewise is criticizing typical horror media. It's bad on purpose. Isn't it amazing how a writer can take advantage of my own lack of imagination? And Monika herself may be entirely satire, considering Monika tells you how to remove her file from the game. It's not, I deleted the other girl's files, it's, hey, did you know that deleting a character's file removes them from existence? You can find the files if you go to Steam, Doki Doki Literature Club properties. Hey, are you listening? Go to browse local files. Making it not only bad writing, showing a complete lack of respect towards the intelligence of the average reader. You are too stupid to understand the logic of a metafiction game or look up a tutorial online. Shocked when I delete it, she's still alive for unknown reasons. A new background appears and a brand new music track is made. The game could have ended here, not on a high note, but at least on an acceptance of her own reality. But she decides to restore the world to normal. Sari comes back and all club presidents now have meta powers to devolve the narrative even further. Sari begins to tell me how much she loves me and respects me for trying to make the other girls happy, and how she hates Monika for making her kill herself, even though she's the reason that she's back to begin with. She goes crazy, but get this, you can save her from her existential crisis if you manage to find all the CGs in the game. The melding of your reality to your own consciousness doesn't faze Sari when she finds out that you have masturbated to private photos of herself and her friends. This grand revelation is enough for her to salvage her sanity, forgive Monika, and reconsider her entire value system by living peacefully knowing that she is in a visual novel. Pseudo-intellectuals praise this game for deconstructing visual novel tropes, but how do they justify such an inane idea? Sure, relationships by helping girls with problems and being rewarded with sex is pandering to its loser audience, but at least it has a bit of basis in reality, considering that I've done nothing remotely positive and that all my actions are creepy and who I am as an individual. It is the most vile pandering crap I have ever seen in a visual novel. If you spend enough hours looking at pictures, you will save the girls and they will love you for it. The same pseudo-intellectual will claim that it's a satire and justified for its poor writing. And to be fair, how can you blame them? The anime aesthetic means everything and subsequently nothing. It's perfectly happy to write low-grade emotional porn to fetishize its depressed high school girls as a means of being enjoyable. It's chock full of plot holes, its character personalities reset whenever they want. It is easily the most pretentious thing that I've ever read. Self-inserting for writing tips, using its characters to talk about how cool and smart the author is. Everything it says, it trods along and becomes the exact opposite. Where suicide is realistic but it fails by its own logic. But hey, at least we can use Monika to spout off unpopular opinions. Why does God let people suffer? Any criticism of any cliches is found in literally any date sim parody. It even backs down and claims you can like whatever you want. It's more than happy to extort money off of going on dates with the girls. You'd say it lacks integrity if it had any to begin with. Considering Doki Doki was an advertisement for a game that no one would care or know about if not for its relation, meaning that all your successes will be forever compared with a deconstructive satire, and even if they are garbage and when they rely on tropes other than anime, and you can no longer claim satire, you will be forgiven because hey, it was a bad game, but how can you top a deconstructive satire? At least he's the one that made Doki Doki Literature Club. It's hanging on that tiny crevice where it can take the high ground on presenting itself as intellectual under the huge spectrum of anime and likewise write itself poorly and get credit for that. Anything vaguely different can be justified using the lowest common denominator. Well, that game doesn't do it, and if you criticize the root, I didn't actually say anything was bad, I just said the bad media. How bold. The game makes no sense in any aspect that can be labeled under satire, so who even cares about the content of the game? I don't know what it's trying to say because it doesn't have anything to say.